The topwater frog is one of the most exciting lures to fish, but sadly, it doesn't work all year round. It's primarily just a warm water fishing technique.
Gosh, dang. Oh my gosh, that was exhilarating.
Your Texas rigs, your chatterbaits, your crankbaits, they all work 12 months out of the year, but the frog, not so much. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about when in the season to first start throwing a topwater frog so you can be more confident and, more importantly, more efficient with this thing on the water on your fishing trips. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it.
Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all.
I can't believe what I just caught.
Yes!
So the structure of the video is gonna flow something like this. Section 1 is going to talk about the conditions and time of the year that actually make the frog a useful lure and not a waste of your time. Next, I'm gonna compare the topwater frog to other lures that are not in the topwater category during the early season. And lastly, I'm gonna touch on why you may choose a topwater frog over other topwater style lures like ploppers, walking baits, and buzz baits. But before we hop into the frog fishing content, I wanna thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is the Bass Forecast mobile app. Over the past 5 years, I have helped Bass Forecast improve their algorithm to understand how weather affects your bodies of water. So your ponds, your lakes, and your rivers, Bass Forecast can help you with that. And like I said, it uses weather data both past, present, and up to 10 days in the future to help predict where the fish should bite, their movement and their behavior, and what lures they should be biting on. So if you want to go out there and throw a topwater frog and you check Bass Forecast and it says frog is nowhere to be found, it's probably not the best time of the year to throw a frog. So if you struggle to understand how weather affects your bodies of water, or you just want to become that next level of bass fisherman, I will leave Bass Forecast link down below. Please download it using that link, and you get a Tackle Warehouse gift card, an Omnia gift card, and tons of awesome discounts. It actually technically pays you to download the app. All right, so section number 1, when should you start throwing a topwater frog? When does this category of lure become efficient? Not when can you maybe get one bite on it. When would I recommend you actually take the time to throw this thing? And that is the springtime, whatever that means for you. Way down in South Texas and especially South Florida, the frog bite is kind of all year round, but especially late January, early February, that's where springtime really begins. That's when the frog bite can pick back up. And if you're in New York or Canada, the frog bite probably isn't any good until April, maybe even May. And on the pond or lake you fish, if you're able to tell the water temperature, as soon as it hits 60 degrees, any colder, a frog bite is possible. But I would say, again, to be efficient, 60 degrees and above is when I start throwing a topwater frog. And if you do not have a fish finder and you can't tell water temperature, as long as you can see some kind of budding or blooming happening in the flowers in the trees around you, that's pretty much a telltale sign that fish are relatively shallow and a frog bite can probably happen somewhere. Now, at this point in the year, the frog bite to me is a situational bite all day long. So as long as you have the proper cover, the proper structure up shallow to be casting a frog to, it can work. Am I throwing it all day long over everything and everything on the water column? No, I'm not. It's very situational. And I just realized as I'm talking about this, in this video, I'm not talking about the gear, the hook set, the fishability of a frog. If you go on the YouTube search bar and search Tyler's Real Fishing Frog, you're gonna find probably 8 or 9 videos I've made about how to actually fish a frog. So pause this video right now if you've never caught a bass on a frog, because that's kind of prerequisite information to understand. So again, go watch those and come right back here. But springtime, the frog is situational. If the body of water you are fishing during the springtime has the proper amount of shallow cover targets for a bass to build a nest around, build a bed around, then a frog should be your first cast to all those locations. But if you have a relatively bland pond with not a whole lot of stumps, not a whole lot of grass edges or grass holes, probably sticking with subsurface lures a little bit more into the spring, like vibrating jigs and worms, is probably more worth your time until the population of fish, there's more of them that are active up shallow. As soon as the early spring hit here in Texas, I put the kayak out to a local pond with the hope of catching one on a frog. And even though I thought it was early, I got some bites.
Man, there's one. There's one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes! First frog bass of the year. I knew there would be one. Get your face in here. Yeah, that was fun. Pop and pad perch, roof of the mouth. Classic spawn time, pre-spawn frog bite, hardly a bite at all, just a little slurp. Thank you, buddy. Well, that was a heck of a lot of fun. Now, the reasons why I knew picking up a frog might be a good thing are twofold. One, the conditions. We are at the very end of the pre-spawn. Matter of fact, some fish may be spawning. It was a full moon yesterday. Along with that, the crazy warm temperatures and warm wind that stirred up the entire ecosystem is beneficial. Gets all that cold water underneath, brings it up top, kind of brings up the whole water temperature of the entire body of water. Oh, there was one. Oh, they're up here. Not explosive hits, just little slurps. And these cattails, now it's not always gonna be the case, but usually they'll have a steeper edge to them. So pre-spawn fish will be sitting on them, and spawning fish, and post-spawn fry garters. So that's why I like cattails for a frog, really for the majority of the spring. All fish pads, all fish grass, but I love me a deep reed edge, holy cow.
On this fishing day, I threw my frog at just the high percentage shallow grass targets like those cattails you see on the screen right now. And even though, again, the water was probably a little bit too cold, it was still high percentage enough in shallow water that those males were making their nests, and I was able to get a few of them to bite the frog.
That was cool. That was cool. I gave that fish a follow-up, and I got him. Yeah, we got a bunch of males moving up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Goodness. I mean, like I could predict it. Right where a thick reed edge begins, a fish was sitting.
Now, if I had made my cast with the frog a little bit further off the edge and not made exact casts right into the side of the cattails, I probably would have gotten a whole lot less bites, maybe 0 bites, and thought there's no topwater bite going on. And if I had chose a different topwater lure, like a walking bait, a plopper, a buzzbait, it would have been possible to get those same bites, but a lot more challenging, and I'll discuss the why on that here in a second. Now, to be honest, the answer to every question of when should I throw XYZ lure on my pond or on my lake should always be whenever you want to, but I don't think you really should want to throw a frog until the springtime is fully here wherever you live or is oh so close. Because I don't want you to waste your time throwing a lure that's not highly effective, and if the water is too cold, bass, again, for the most part, there's maybe some bodies of water where the fish act differently. Most bodies of water, the fish don't want to come up to eat on top until that water gets into springtime range. So I don't want you all to waste time. Don't throw a frog until it's spring. Now, once the spring is over, the when of frog fishing, again, for maximum productivity while using it, for the most part becomes just an early morning bite or an overcast day bite. As soon as the sun is up, the frog bite is usually done. At that point in the day, bass move from shallow water to mid-depth, sometimes way out deep on the ledges, on the brush piles, and of course, that kind of stuff is way out of frog range. And in ponds, they may move all the way out into the middle, and so again, you may be able to reach them with a frog, but they're not gonna come up to eat it for the most part. And so throwing a frog, to me, is a rainy day, an overcast day, and especially an early morning shade type of bite, where as long as you have some shade on the water, the fish are usually up shallow. And again, it's not just situational. So it's not just against the edge of cattails or against the side of a stump or underneath a dock. It can be anywhere in open water. Of course, though, a frog, we're going to talk about it compared to other topwaters here in a little bit. A frog is not a treble hook type lure, so I would prefer to throw those over totally open water. But again, if you have some kind of cover and it's the late spring, post-spawn summertime, a frog is still a really good choice as long as the light is low. And one technique to take advantage of the frog bite for as long into the morning as possible on sunny days that you can do, and of course in a bass boat, in a kayak, or a john boat, but also on the bank to a certain extent, is what's called chasing the shade, where you move from spot to spot depending on where the shade is at, starting with, I guess, if the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, you're going to want to start on those western banks because they're going to get the sun hitting them first, and then you're going to save the eastern banks for later on in the day, or I say an hour or two in the morning, when those are going to be the last shaded spots, because you can take advantage fully of the topwater bite, specifically the frog bite, for as long as you can by chasing the shade.
Chase the shade, chase the shade. All right. Oh, got him. I got him so good, he got himself. Get in here. Uh-oh, sorry for the lighting, y'all, or it could look gorgeous. Who knows? Chasing the shade. Got me a little fry guard male.
Now, at what point in the year should you stop throwing a topwater frog? When does this stop becoming efficient? And I would say, for me, I fish it throughout all the fall, but like late October, November, for me here in Texas, the frog bite is practically done. Again, the subsurface stuff, not just deep stuff. The bass still may be shallow, but I've just found for the most part, they'll bite other topwaters up shallow, like buzz baits and walking baits and ploppers, but the frog bite is just not nearly as efficient as it once was. And then as soon, of course, as winter gets here, the fish are not biting a frog. And for y'all up north in New York and Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, kind of that panhandle there, I would say middle of the fall, which is what, September, September, October is probably the end of efficient frog fishing for you guys. So now that we've talked about the when of frog fishing, I want to compare it to two different types of lures: non-topwater lures, aka subsurface lures, and other topwaters. So here in category 2, we're going to talk about the frog, specifically really sticking to the springtime. I know in the previous section I talked about how the frog is applicable and efficient at all times from the spring to the fall, but the rest of this video we're really going to talk about just the springtime. And for me, if the frog bite is not working in the spring, there is no better lures than soft plastics in relatively open water, maybe a little bit of wood or a little bit of vegetation, especially around that like pre-spawn spawn time period. And then you've got crankbaits and jigs, my two favorites, around wood and hardcover. So if you were to fish an area like I fished in the kayak earlier on in this video with shallow cattails, and you make some cast down it with a topwater frog and don't get a bite, again, it doesn't mean there's not a fish there. It just means maybe the fish are not quite in a mood. They may be in a mood a day or 3 days from now, but right now they're not quite in a mood to bite the frog. So you want to cast a wacky rig. Here's the Mach stick, my favorite kind of early spring wacky rig, a creature bait, maybe swim a paddle tail swim bait or a swim jig down the edge of that stuff. And if you still don't get a bite there on any of those things, topwater or subsurface, in that springtime time of year, it probably means the fish haven't gotten there yet, or they're just really finicky. And this overall technique is called junk fishing. And if you get really good at it, you can make quick work of understanding your bodies of water. I mean, I'm talking like launch the kayak, fish for an hour or two, and within that time period, you may have caught some fish and pretty much fully understood the stage of the spawn, the stage of the spring the fish are in, and it can really educate you as to what lures to throw the rest of the day. So pay attention, throw topwater first, again, against those very specific springtime shallow targets. If that doesn't work, go subsurface, and if that doesn't work, the bass are even deeper probably. So in the spring, if you've got a body of water you are fishing that looks like this, I would recommend not throwing a frog. If your body of water looks like this, I would throw a topwater frog first and then a soft plastic later on in the day up close to the edge. If your pond or lake looks like this, I would recommend throwing, again, a topwater frog first in the spring and then flipping a creature bait or a jig into like the heart, the nasty middle section of that wood. And if your lake looks like this on the shoreline, I would recommend throwing a frog first and then a swim jig or a paddle tail swim bait out on the edge later on. Although, you know what? If there is that much shallow grass to cover, that much hay grass or shoreline stuff, whatever you've got in your body of water, maybe you should just go ahead and fish a swim jig or a swim bait high up in the water column, because honestly, at that point, it's kind of a topwater in itself, as long as you're within like the first 4 inches of the water column, because a frog is just a little bit too slow of a retrieve to fish that expansive of an area where the fish could really be anywhere. Now, you may have looked at those scenarios and thought, well, Tyler, why did you choose a topwater frog first on all those shallow water stuff and not a different type of topwater? I love a popper. I love a plopper style lure. I love a buzzbait. Why couldn't I just throw those? And the answer is, of course you can. I just don't think they are as efficient during this time of the year. And so let's move on to category number 3 of comparing the topwater frog to other categories of topwater. And I know I talked about other seasons earlier on in the video, but I really want to focus this one on springtime. And for me, again, just my personal experience, personal anecdote here, I have found the topwater frog for a variety of reasons to be the most efficient topwater in the springtime. Not the one that gets the biggest bites. I think a buzzbait gets the biggest bites. Not the one that if you've got a whole lot of chop on the water, a whole lot of wind, gets the most bites. That's where a plopper or a walking bait come into play. But I just think if you have good, shallow water, relatively calm, maybe clear to slightly stained water, and the fish are on beds, you cannot, or I say on beds, they are close to on beds or fry guarding. I don't think any other topwater in the spring gets as many bites as a frog does. Now, in scenario 4, could you have thrown a buzzbait instead of a frog? Yes. In scenario 3, could you have thrown a popper? Yes. In scenario 2, could you have thrown a walking bait? Yes. And in scenario 1, could any topwater get a bite? Yeah, it probably could at some point. But to me, the reason why I think a topwater frog just gets more bites in the spring is because of its PSP, its profile, its sound, and its presence. Bass in the springtime are really focused on one thing, and that is spawning. The pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn. That's why that word is in the middle, because it's the most important. And what's a bass's arch nemesis during the spawn? Well, it's a bluegill. And for the most part, the best topwater at actually imitating a bluegill's motions, its presence, its size, and its color is going to be a topwater frog, not any of the rest of them. And I have seen over and over and over again over my 15 years of springtime bass fishing experience, that your louder style of lures just don't seem to get bit as much in the springtime, and neither do the really fast ones. So if the fish are in like the full-blown winter to pre-spawn, yes, I'm throwing a vibrating jig, I'm throwing a lipless crankbait. This here is a beaded version, but of course the one knocker version works as well. But as soon as you get to like the late pre-spawn where the fish are really cruising up shallow, the ultra loud, abrasive, aggressive lures just aren't the best. I don't think a cruising fish that is looking for a place to spawn is going to eat a lipless crankbait over a shallow, super calm, quiet, methodically moving swim bait. And of course, can you still fish the lures you want to fish that are loud in the full-blown spring? You can. But I don't teach that on this channel. I teach efficiency, and so a frog is just a better topwater for its, again, profile, its presence, and its sound. Now, once it gets to full-blown post-spawn summertime, yes, I'm throwing a ton of walking baits, a ton of plopper styles, a ton of poppers around super targeted areas up shallow, as long as there's not a whole lot of stuff to get snagged on. I'm throwing all the topwater styles. But for me, in the spring, you want to be throwing a topwater frog, and that's why I pick it during this time of the year. So hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. This was really just my attempt to sit down and make sure you guys understand, if you're gonna throw topwater, pick one that makes a whole lot of sense. So again, big thanks to Bass Forecast for sponsoring this channel. I will leave the link to download it down below, as well as all my affiliate links for my favorite topwater frogs, my little favorite mini topwater frog, the Poppin' Pipsqueak. I'll even put down there my favorite rod, reel, and line combo for small topwaters, let's say poppers and small frogs, maybe small ploppers like the 90 size, and then also my favorite topwater combo for frogs around open water and walking baits around open water, and then my biggest combo for like the frogs around the slop. I'll leave all three of those combos linked down in the video description. And like I said, I didn't talk much about how to fish a frog in this video. This was more of a situational type video. So if you want to watch my frog fishing masterclass, whammy, it'll be up here in the corner. And if you want to watch an uncut video fishing nothing or hardly anything but a topwater frog from the pond, that video will be clickable up here in this corner. My name is Tyler. As always, it's a pleasure, and we'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.